a lot of people would say, you made every mistake in the book. But again, it worked. Mission Accepted, Season 2, Episode 4. We are in the thick of it, and I am, whenever I say in the thick of it, all I can think of is that new TikTok song from the Backyardigans or whatever. Yeah. I love TikTok. Anyway, we're in the thick of Mission Accepted. We've been putting off Mission Accepted recordings for a couple months with some tech issues and other issues, and you have been one of the guests that has been like on every scheduled recording day. But we're finally here live with you now. So thank you so much for sticking it out with us and coming on and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you.
I'm excited to do it with you because this specific application, out of all the applications we've done so far in Mission Accepted, at least Season 2, is one that stands out for one very specific reason, and that is school fit. I believe you got into the one school that you got into. You got the one interview that you got because of the one school that you applied to that fit with your specific mission in life and the activities that showed what your mission and passions were in life. And that will become much more clear as we continue on down this path. But I want to hear from you, your self-reflection as you've gone through this process now that you're in school. Looking back, what do you think made your application cycle successful for you?
Well, it was definitely an interesting cycle because I had the COVID stuff. So my MCAT got postponed a few times. I got messed up with that. But one of the successes I guess I had was I felt like I wasn't like super different than everybody, but I had some different activities that I could put on my application, and kind of like you mentioned, they really fit with where I wanted to go with school. And not to do a spoiler or anything, but at George Washington, it was one of my top schools that I wanted to go to. Yeah. And so I don't know if I catered my application to George Washington, but everything kind of just fit and led me to that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say you catered to George Washington. I think you told your story, and that is your story that just happens to cater specifically to one school that is very known to fit with kind of the things that you did. Right, and unless you're telling me that you left out like 10 different experiences that highlighted other things, I think your application just showed who you are, and it resonated with this one school. So I'm excited to jump in. If you are, we'll take a look at your application. So looking at your PDF, always the first thing I love looking at is when you applied. You applied a little bit later, July 9th. What was the timeline for you for that?
I honestly, that's one of my, there's a few regrets I have with this, and I'm sure you'll point them out maybe, or we'll at least get to them. But the time of my submission was one of them, and it's because I psyched myself out with my MCAT. After I was done with mine, I kind of was in a mindset of I did not do very well, and I wanted to wait to get my score until I submitted. And so, and I think it was a mistake that I did that, but that's why it was so late. I waited those 4 weeks from when I took my test to getting it until I submitted.
Yeah, I would consider that a mistake. And what I would generally recommend for someone in your situation is spend the $180 whatever dollars it is for the primary application plus the whatever. And no, you get one school with that. So whatever the price is for the one kind of application fee in one school, pay that, submit to one school. Doesn't have to be a throwaway school, but just submit to one school so you can get in the queue to get verified, get your score back, and then go, okay, I'm going to add the other schools to my list now. That way, it just starts that process much earlier. With rolling admissions, the earlier your application is in, the earlier it's going to get verified, the earlier it can get reviewed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So definitely a recommendation there. Okay, so definitely something that you understand and recognize. So as we continue on, we don't see any major red flags, no disadvantaged essay. We get to grades, and grades are going to be important later on because of your personal statement. It's a little foreshadowing there, but we see the C- right off the bat for semester 1 here. You have a C minus, A minus, B minus, B, A minus. Decent grades. The C minus obviously brings down everything a bunch, but not terrible, right? If that C minus wasn't there, A minuses, B minuses, not a bad semester to start out.
I also was not planning on doing med school during that first semester. But
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you have economic principles and problems, comparative government and politics. So kind of going back, and we'll see it later on through the rest of your application, is potentially policy, politics, maybe going to law school.
Exactly. Yep.
Was in your future. So at what point did that switch happen?
It was, and I have an activity about this that I'm sure we'll get to. It was during my 2-year service mission for my church.
Yeah.
Is really when that mindset flipped for me. And then I went back to BYU and pretty much started over. It took me 5 years to graduate. And it's because of that switch of, I'm not going to go down this route to possibly law school, business school, or whatever. And then I wanted to do med school.
Yeah. All right. Got it. All right. So we continue on, and we just glancing at your grades. We see, let's see where the split is. So from 2015 to 2017 here is that split where you went off on your mission. You came back to school, and we see a potential shift in your grades as well. And I don't know typically if that's from this just fits with me a little bit better. I understand this material a little bit better than maybe the economic side of things or the policy side of things. Or I'm much more passionate about this new thing, this new journey that I'm on, and therefore I'm more dedicated to doing well in my classes. What do you think it was for you?
I think it was a mixture of both, and then also a maturity thing as well, like having those 2 years to kind of just take a break from school. When I came back, I had that dedication to do better in school. One, like you said, because I was passionate about this and I knew that this was the path I wanted to go on. And then also the science stuff just fit me better. I was always good at that in high school, I guess. And high school and college are very different, but the science stuff was always more suited for me, I guess.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So we see a good shift until we get to Orgo. The good OChem is a crusher for everyone.
Had a comeback, though.
That's good. That's good. So we continue on. Again, we have all the grades, and we'll scroll down to getting to your kind of grade chart here. Science-wise, 3.5, 3.3, 3.05. Thanks, OChem. And then 3.46. So bringing it back up a little bit senior year, not including kind of the rest of your senior year, which wasn't included in the GPA calculations. So 3.29 overall science GPA. I think most people looking at that would go, 3.29, that's not good enough to get in to medical school. 3.64 all other GPA, 3.47 total GPA. What was your mindset once you were able to kind of calculate your GPA or see your GPA calculated? What was the mindset for you of like, I'm going to apply to medical school, or maybe I should stop and do a post-bac or something else?
Yeah, so I was definitely a little worried about the science GPA. I thought that was going to be the thing that could hinder me the most. But I watched a lot of your videos while I was doing my application, and I noticed you would talk a lot about like upward trend. And I saw that with mine. It's not on there because it doesn't break it down by semester. But my very first semester, I had like a 2.96 GPA. And I talk about that of how I increased pretty much from there. So I just thought, I have a good upward trend. I finished pretty strong, and I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. 2.96 GPA does come up a little bit later. Some more foreshadowing. So, all right. So GPA-wise, it's there. Not stellar, not horrible. A little bit of an upward trend, at least senior year, 19 credits, 3.46 science GPA. We get to your MCAT score. You said you had some issues with COVID, obviously MCAT and COVID, and just everyone dealing with the test being pushed back, the test being shortened. But you came out of it pretty well with a 5.11. What did you think when you got that score back?
In my head, I was telling myself anything above a 5.10 and I would be fine and I would submit. Anything below and I would redo it. And the one thing that really upset me, I guess, it was my CAR score.
Yeah.
I didn't really ever improve on that. So I took a MCAT class, and the very first practice test I took, I actually got a 125 on car. And 9 months later, I get a 125. So I don't know. I never figured the car out, but everything else was okay, and I was fine with it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So what? 5'11", really good score. Nothing to be worried about there. All right. Then we get to your experience descriptions. And I think out of the 3 other Mission Accepted episodes this season, I think your experience descriptions are probably, I don't want to say the worst, but they're the least strong in terms of connection and storytelling and really helping me understand who you are. But this is why I love Mission Accepted, is that it was good enough, and the types of experiences that you had drew you to one specific school and drew that school to you, and it's just a match made in heaven. So again, we'll continue down this path. So talking about physician shadowing, you have it on here, kind of just what you did throughout the day and what it did for you, etc. So nothing too special there. Physician shadowing, writing about it is never too special. Hospital volunteer. So one of the things that I think watching application renovation videos compared to Mission Accepted, at least so far, one of the biggest differences that I typically see is application renovation students, the students who don't get into medical school typically, are students who are trying to overly sell themselves of like, look at how amazing I am, look at all of these skills that I have, instead of just saying, look at who I am and what I've done. And so you have this hospital volunteer experience here, not a ton of hours, only 30 hours volunteering at this Intermountain Hospital. Your primary responsibility was to guide patients and visitors to their given destinations within the hospital, so kind of job duty stuff, which doesn't resonate well. And then you sold skills here, right? This experience required excellent communication skills, a friendly manner, and a high level of professionalism, right? Again, I don't need students to sell me what they think I want to read or hear or that I'm checking off this checklist of like, we're only inviting people that have excellent communication skills, a friendly manner, which like it sounds a friend. I don't know who uses that sort of language, like a friendly. You have such a friendly manner. It's just so funny. So I just having a little fun here, but again, just that sales pitch side of things, just to me, it isn't needed. And then we get to this Men's Health Network Health Policy Summer Intern. So this was in 2019, 2020. After you had made the switch to medicine, you potentially found this place where you could combine your two interests, right?
Yeah.
Of health, going into medical school potentially, and policy with this Men's Health Network Health Policy Summer Intern. How much of this activity do you think has shaped who you are as a person and your application as a whole?
Actually, a lot. It was just a few months, but this was the one activity where I was really like, this is going to help me really decide if what I'm doing is right. Because I decided, okay, I'm going to do med school, but I don't really want to leave behind politics. So maybe I can do this policy thing, but I need to get some kind of experience with this. And so I applied for this internship. I got it. And it was some of the best months of my life. I was involved with working in congressional offices, trying to introduce bills, writing comments to the Department of Health and Human Services, to the United States Preventative Services Task Force, just things I didn't really know how like healthcare and policy like really worked. I learned it. And it really solidified my plan to go to med school and pursue this health policy in my future.
Yeah. And so that alone, if a student understands what medical schools are out there, what medical schools are interested in, what their kind of mission is in life, there's one specific medical school in the DC area that fits perfectly with students who are interested in policy. So keep that in the back of your mind for all of you watching. And so you gave this kind of in the description and the most meaningful remarks. You talked about what happened, right? It's not an overly sales pitchy kind of thing. You just talked about what you did, how it impacted you, which is great. It's what you should be doing. You have this chemistry teaching assistant role here. I'm a little confused in the total hours that you put here. So you have 2018 to 2021. That's less than 3 years because it's October 2018 to July of 20, or not July, April of 2021. A full-time job. How much is a full-time job?
40 hours a week.
40 hours a week. How many hours a year is it? Do you know?
Ooh, like 2,000.
Yeah, 2,080, right? 52 weeks, 40 hours a week. It's 2,080 hours a week. And so you have 3 years, less than 3 years, it's about a year and a half, of work here with 7,000 hours that you have down, which is more than a full-time job. And so my assumption is that it's a typo. And so
I think it is.
That's what I'm going to go with. Maybe 700 was what you were hoping for, but it's always just one of those things. Double check, triple check, always the hours that you have on things.
Actually, on that, because I was just reviewing before this, I think on my volunteer experience, I'm pretty sure I put that as clinical, and it absolutely was not.
Oh, really?
So yeah, just another. I think my hours were weird. There were a couple where I wish I would have just put 0. But that's just what happened.
Yeah. And guess what? You still got into medical school. So that it's just to show you, right? You can make mistakes as long as they're not like overly like you're trying to lie to me here. A mistake like that is so egregious that it has to be a typo, right? For 2.5 years of work to say 7,000 hours, like it has to be a typo. So because
I actually remember like going back and looking at my pay stubs and like trying to figure it out. So yeah, I must have just done something wrong there and missed it.
Yeah, and that's okay. All right, so we get to the next experience here. And not a lot of experience, 25 hours here. You mark it as most meaningful. Why did you mark this one as most meaningful with only 25 hours? The American Enterprise
AEI?
Executive, yeah.
Yeah, this was another one where I didn't know what to do for the hours because it was, I forget the exact, I think it was a span of 3 years.
You have 2017 to, the same time span you were doing 7,000 hours as a teaching assistant. You were here. That's why it was so few hours. You were too busy as a teaching assistant.
So this was an organization that I became familiar with when I was actually in high school. I had an older cousin who was also BYU who was part of this group. And I always knew that I wanted politics to be part of my life. And he kind of explained this group to me. And I knew when I got to BYU and I was eligible for it, I wanted to apply to be part of the American Enterprise Institute Executive Council. And it was a great experience. They had a few, like they called them policy summits. One was at UC Berkeley. Another one was in DC. But I actually didn't end up getting to go to that one because of COVID. But they just had different policy events that students, it was me and 4 other people that we were able to host. And it wasn't just health policy, it was education policy. We hosted an event about paid maternity leave. So it was just kind of all over the place. And I just really enjoyed that. And it, I guess, fit with my story of politics and who I am. And that's why I decided to make it one of my most meaningful experiences.
Yeah. So you have it as a most meaningful. The first line in your most meaningful essays here is, my interest in politics began when I was 12 years old. Not a lot of 12-year-olds can say that they are interested in policy or politics. And so again, your initial comments very early on was, I don't know if I crafted my application for this one specific school. I don't think you did. I think you told your story, and it just happened to resonate very much with one specific school that is interested in policy and politics as a big part of their mission. So again, great job making sure that you're telling your story. And this is where I think a lot of students potentially for an experience like that, they're like, well, maybe I won't put it on there because it's not healthcare related, and the application should be crafted towards healthcare and medicine, and the other one makes sense, the men's health one, because that's healthcare policy, but this one's less healthcare. But I'm glad that it's on there because, again, it's your story. You're telling your story. You're showing the reader, the reviewers, who you are. Perfect. All right. And then you get to your missionary service. Again, this is the 2 years you took off from school. You're in the DC area. Again, ties to the area, which is strong. And you don't, for missions, you don't get to pick where you go, right? You're told where to go.
It's assigned, yeah.
It was assigned, and it was assigned potentially that you were put in this area where you are now in medical school and can serve that community even more, which is awesome. So you have this experience, and you kind of change your path in life because of this experience. And again, it's marked as the most meaningful. It's a big part of who you are. Again, it's weird, right? Because your total hours here are 400.
This is another one I should have.
Mission trips, I'm like, that's a full-time gig. And so this one should have been closer to the 2,000 hours a year over 2 years. So 4,000 plus hours. So it's kind of funny. This one, you're missing a zero. The other one, maybe you added a zero. And so, again, great experience, shows me who you are, doing what you're doing, having this kind of progression there. And then you have Eagle Scout. So talk to me why you put Eagle Scout on your application, because it looks like Eagle Scout was high school.
Yeah, it was. It was just something that I felt was part of my upbringing and who I am and my story. And I dedicated a lot of time to it, and yeah, it was in high school, but I just decided to throw it in there.
Okay. Yeah. So did you put
Do you
it
think
in
I
there?
shouldn't have?
Typically, the general recommendation is things that happen in high school stay off of your medical school application.
Okay.
Did you potentially put it in there because you also have 3 hobbies? And so I wonder if you're like, I need to have some more experiences. What else can I add on there? Was that potentially part of the thought process?
It could have been. Honestly, it was a long time ago, and I don't exactly remember, but it definitely could have been.
Yeah. So whenever I see 3 hobbies on an application, I'm like, uh-oh, this person's stretching a little bit. I love hobbies on an application. I would recommend no more than 2 hobbies on an application. You have 3 on there. Again, obviously, it didn't kill your application. There's almost no kind of like hard and fast rules that say if you do this, your application's going to be trash no matter what. A lot of what we talk about are general recommendations, kind of tried and true kind of rules of thumb that can be broken, and your application's not going to explode and go into the abyss, and nobody will read it. Some people may go, that kind of bucks the trend, but here you are. And so you got a couple of hobbies on there. The gold panning one I think is really interesting. Did that come up at all in your interview?
It didn't, but it came up in orientation here. They like called it out. So
nice.
They remembered it.
Yeah, that is definitely one that I would remember as an interesting one. So, so really good there. Again, electrical warehouse employee. So just showing me a little bit of what you did and who you are. Was good, and then golfing as a hobby. I love the tie-in to the kind of this Mormon philosophy of addiction is bad, but I'm addicted to golf. Kind of little humor there. I really enjoyed there. So good job. So if we go back and watch, and I know you haven't seen these because I just recorded these today, but for everyone else watching, if you go back and watch episode 1, 2, and 3 of season 2 of Mission Accepted, the activity descriptions here are probably the least good of all of the episodes, but again, good enough. And those 2 kind of policy activities really tie in to who you are as a person. Again, what resonated with the school that you ended up going to. And then we get to your personal statement. Talk to me about your personal statement, because you start off your personal statement talking about something that I don't think you should talk about, and then you call it out and go, I know I shouldn't really talk about this in my personal statement, but whatever. Talk to me about the thought process behind this personal statement.
Yeah, so kind of going back, I wanted to make sure that my upward trend was known, because with the grade breakdown in the little chart, like it has it, but I wanted it to be as extreme as it could have been. So I wanted to throw the 296 in there. And so I just started out with it, and it kind of, that's what my story was. I went in, I wanted to take these hard classes to learn what I could, not planning on going to med school, and then things just turned around, and that's what I wanted to go with.
Yeah. So I don't think you should have done that. I still don't think you should have done that.
Okay.
What you have to remember, and even the way you just described it, I've wanted to call out my trend as much as possible. The chart that you see in the PDF is not what the medical schools see. Right? And I think that's a big misconception that students have, because we see these charts, whether it's just watching application renovation or mission accepted videos, or it's seeing other people post online, their PDF printout from their application. That's what you as a student see when you print your application once it's verified. That is what you see. The medical schools get every single data point, and they have their own software that charts it and graphs it and manipulates it however they want, however they need it for their own purposes. And so just a very common misconception that the medical schools get this same PDF and that's what they're going off of. That is not what they're going off of. Okay?
Okay, that's good to know.
Good to know. So your first several paragraphs here, first 5 it looks like, are basically all about hard work and not giving up. Right? Failing, kind of. Some cliches about Michael Jordan and failing. Multiple quotes from different people, which in general, right, we typically say don't use quotes in a personal statement. This is supposed to be your words and your story, not other people's words. And so lots of what I think in general, a lot of people would say, you made every mistake in the book. But again, it worked. And so the perfect application, I was so excited to talk to you, to number one, show a lot of these common mistakes, and to show that sometimes either I don't know what I'm talking about, or sometimes there's just something in your application that interests the medical school for them to overlook other parts of it. To go, well, this personal statement's a little bit weird, but these other things are really interesting, and I want to talk to you. How many interviews did you get through the application cycle? One interview. Okay. One interview, one acceptance. And that continues to tie into this theme that I have. There was something in your application for George Washington, which is very much known for policy and advocacy, being so close to the Hill, being so close to all of that stuff, that they obviously, as part of their admissions process, are looking for students who are interested in those same things. And so your application came across their desk and your GPA was good enough. Your MCAT score was good enough. And this is where I get a lot of flack from students going, good enough, whatever. Like, Dr. Gray, you're ridiculous. You have to have a 4.0 and a 528. I'm like, no, like it has to be good enough, right? GW is no slouch of a school. It's a really good school. It's a very competitive school to get into, as is every medical school. And there was something in your application, those 2 big activities of doing policy work, your kind of later on in your college career, and then some policy work with the AEI, right? The AEI over a prolonged period of time, and understanding who you are as a student, and not trying to force this fake narrative about something else about who you are, that resonated with the admissions committee at GW, and they said, let's say they think just like I do, right? And go, tell your stories and show me who you are, and the personal statement should be this exact thing, whatever, right? Let's say they think exactly like that. They go, I don't care about anything else. This person has good enough stats. We know based on historical data that this person will do fine at our school. They're going to pass. They're not going to have any issues. But these two activities and who this person is highlights exactly the type of student we're looking for, and someone who can be a leader in our class and can show other people his passion for policy and advocacy, and continue our kind of story and brand here about policy and advocacy, etc. And so they invited you for an interview. And then you go for an interview. How much of your policy stuff came up in the interviews?
A lot.
Shocker.
It pretty much was the whole interview.
Shocker, right?
Yeah.
And my assumption is because you were truthful to who you are in your application, those things resonated with the school. They wanted to talk to you about it because that's who they are. They're being truthful and honest about who they are, that you can easily talk about it. Your passions come out when talking about it, about maybe future endeavors with policy and advocacy, your past endeavors with policy and advocacy. And it was just a fun conversation of your passions.
Yeah, it really was. The interview went very smoothly. It was just a really good conversation with whoever it was on the admissions committee, and I really enjoyed it.
Nice. It's amazing what it's like when you actually do your homework. And I wouldn't even say you did your homework. I'm assuming that you either knew of GW and knew of their kind of mission and vision for their medical school just because of your time in DC, or as you were building your school list, you kind of were looking at different locations, and DC obviously a big part of your journey, and you're like, oh, I could live in DC again. And so you're looking at schools, and then you see GW come across and go, oh my gosh, like this is a match made in heaven. So I'm definitely applying there, and you add it to your list. And so I'm going to skip over the rest of your personal statement because I don't think it's a good personal statement.
Okay.
But again, it's good enough, right? It's good enough, right? You have this kind of cliche like wholeness. I don't know where this kind of theme of wholeness came from, but you talked about holes a lot later on in the personal statement. But again, perfect example to show that students can get into medical school with, in my opinion, is not a strong personal statement. You don't have to have the best of the best of the best of the best to get into medical school. You have to be a good enough student. You have to apply to the right schools that fit you as a person. And you have to cross your fingers sometimes. And you got your one interview. You got your one acceptance. That's all that matters. And so I'm just so excited to talk to you. And then I want to look at your school list, because your school list, I think, is really bad too.
I've been dreading this part because I know you do this.
I haven't been doing it in these previous episodes, but
okay.
But I wanted to look at yours because you're a Utah resident. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am.
And so
I was. Yeah.
You were, yeah. So University of Utah obviously is on there as a state school, but Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Arizona, both Arizona campuses, Colorado, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Virginia, Wisconsin. What were you doing?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. It was a mix of pretty much the worst answer I could give is I went on MSAR and I typed in some stuff.
Exactly.
That was it. There are only really 3 schools on there that make sense. GW, Colorado is where I'm from, and then Utah.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was like, well, let's type in some numbers and
stats,
see what pops up on the screen.
Yeah. So you got very lucky in this process, and this is where, it's not lucky. I take that back. You did what you needed to do in your application to tell your specific story. You didn't try to stand out. You didn't try to do anything off the wall, to do something that you think the medical schools want you to see or want you to be, right? You told your story, and it resonated with one specific school for the reasons that we've already talked about. And that school said, we want you. We want to talk to you. We talk to you. We want you. Right. And it's the perfect example. This application is the perfect example that if you have your own passions in life, chase them and then go find the schools that match those passions. Now, unfortunately for you, there aren't a lot of schools that match this kind of policy and politics angle, but there's one, and it worked. Right? But for a lot of students out there, they have their own passions, and there are maybe different locations throughout the country where there are medical schools that also match those passions. And as long as you are taking the time to tell your story in your application, focusing on the activities that you are passionate about, the ones that you want to talk about over and over and over and over again, and you take the time and don't be lazy and go to the MSAR and go, well, here's my GPA and here's my MCAT score. Take the time to research medical schools, find out what their mission is, find out what their vision is, find out what their curriculum looks like, find out what sort of outreach programs they have. Find the schools that match your passions and your kind of goals in life and apply to those schools and hope that your grades are good enough, your MCAT score is good enough, and your application has told your story well enough that they go, oh my gosh, we found the needle in a haystack. You match our vision and mission perfectly. We want you. And that's what happened to you. And I hope that by doing this specific episode, I'm so glad you came on. I hope that by doing this episode, this gives insight to a lot of students that it is okay to chase your passions. You don't have to do these check box things of like, I need to do this and I need to do that, right? You did what you needed to do to get in, and it worked for this one specific school.
I think that's a perfect explanation of it. When I decided that I was going to do health policy stuff, I didn't know that GW kind of had that. But when I was doing the things I should have been doing and researching schools, I did find that there's called scholarly concentrations.
Yep.
And they're kind of just like extra paths you can do within their curriculum.
Yeah.
And they
they're
have
like
a
electives.
health policy one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they have a health policy one, which I'm planning on joining, and I'm very excited about it. And, yeah. And they also have like an MPH path as well that maybe I'll consider doing as well. So once I saw that, I was like, yeah, this school probably is going to work for me, and I would love to go there.
Yeah. At any point in your process, applying to GW, interviewing at GW, was it MCAT an issue or grades an issue? Did it come up at all?
No.
Shocker. Yeah.
There were a couple secondaries that were like, if you got a C or lower, explain it or something. Yeah. But I don't think that applied to GW, and they never mentioned it at all.
Yeah. Perfect example of a good enough, right? And your grades are good, right? They're not outstanding. You have the little upward trend for you. Great MCAT score, but good enough, right? And a perfect mission match for a medical school. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
And you will thrive at that school because of that.
I sure hope so.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words of wisdom for someone watching this?
No, I think you hit everything. I wanted to put my application out there because I knew that I didn't fit the bill for like all the perfect applicants, and I definitely had some errors, but I wanted to showcase that because there's that huge stigma with pre-meds of, oh, I have to be perfect in order to get into med school. And I wasn't, and I was still able to get in. And I really wanted to show that to people to make sure they know that, hey, I can still do this even if I got a C in OChem or my grades aren't that great, things like that.